It's me, Mario.
Be careful, it's a trap!
You were close.
Emergency maneuvers!
I am the Lord of Deadside.
I saw my life flash before my eyes! Sorry to jet, but I'm in a hurry.
Hello and welcome to Strictly 64. I'm your host Clay, and today I am joined by
Okay.
yeah. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Since we launched last week, we've already seen an awesome response from you guys with really not a whole lot of promotion on our end. And so we just want to say thank you so much for giving us a listen.
Yeah, thanks guys. It's been a really pretty amazing week. I think we launched 5 days ago as of recording. And yeah, we've already got 25 subscribers or something on YouTube.
Yeah.
Quite a few hits on the iTunes feed. You can't get much info on there, but it looks like people have been going on it. And I know a few people have visited the website. So yeah, thanks guys. Hope you like what you see or hear so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. So with that said, let's go ahead and just jump into today's game. Now, to preface, when I told Kay that I felt like our first 3 episodes seemed a little bit too positive, so I asked him to maybe pick a game that we could cover this week that might be a little more rough around the edges, something maybe we could possibly tear apart. And so, to be honest, I think he succeeded, at least me personally. And that's because this week we are looking at Chameleon Twist. All right, so to get started, we're going to go ahead and jump into our initial thoughts. Kay, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, okay. Well, this is a game I played very briefly when I was younger. I borrowed it off a friend. I was about 11 years old. I remember playing through to the last boss. I'm not sure if I beat every level, but I remember, I think I lent him one of the Banjo games, and I borrowed this. So, not exactly a fair trade. But,
No.
yeah, it was, I thought it was okay. I think I did it in one evening, which says something when you're 11 years old. But, so I picked it back up a few months ago when I was collecting N64 games, and, yeah, I want to say it hasn't aged well, but then I'm not sure if it was good in the first place. So, I don't know. What do you think, Clay?
Well, this is the first game here on the show, as I mentioned last week, that I have never played before and didn't even own it at the time, so I had to get on the old eBay because I could not find it local. I don't know if it's a little more difficult to find than most games, but I think I spent a whopping $15 on this one, and so I think you'd warned me ahead of time that it wasn't going to be anything groundbreaking, and so I knew, but I'm trying to collect every game, so got to get it eventually, and so picked it up. Yeah, I jumped in, and obviously I went in with low expectations, and I think that those low expectations were met. I wasn't super thrilled with it. I was a little confused at first, and we can talk about that later, but once I kind of started to get the feel for it, it got a little bit better. But towards the end, I did get frustrated. And honestly, if we hadn't been playing this, to review it and to get through it, I probably would have turned it off and probably never put it back in, which says something about the way I play games. I'm not very determined to beat every game I own. And so when I, go buy 4 or 5 N64 games and bring them home, I'll put one in, and if it annoys me within 5 minutes, I'll just turn it off and put the next game in. And so I'm not the most resilient or hardworking when it comes to trying to work through things that frustrate me. So, and we'll talk more about it later, but for the most part, I just really didn't like this game. So, I'm all for finding games that aren't as popular and people don't really know about, and like hidden gems. And this is just not one of those. And I know there's a sequel, and perhaps maybe that one's perfected some of these issues, and we'll talk about that. But overall, not a fan.
Interesting that you say that you try games for maybe 5-10 minutes, and if you're not really feeling it, then you give up. Because I do think there are a lot of games which don't have the best starts, but they're worth playing, worth sticking with. But with Chameleon Twist, I've got to say, if you're not feeling it on the first level, then this just probably isn't the game for you. And what frustrates me most about this game, and we'll go deeper into this later on, but I think it's a game that actually had potential, because there are some ideas here which are actually really interesting and some intelligent mechanics, almost like something that no other game had done at this time. But the way they delivered them, well, yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay. Well, I think that's good initial thoughts there without giving too much away. So we will jump into another short segment of Behind the Scenes. All right, so per kind of the usual now, it's kind of becoming tradition that Kay kind of walks us through the behind the scenes here. I think he gets more of a kick out of it than I do at times, depending on the game. And like I said, this week's a little lacking, so feel free to tell us what you know, man.
Right, okay, so there's barely anything to go into here this week. It's developed by Japan System Supply. It was published by Sunsoft, but they didn't have any hand in the development. Japan System Supply's first ever game was Chameleon Twist, and their last ever game was Chameleon Twist 2. So make of that what you will. Apparently they were like a sub-team for a wider consortium or something. I didn't really understand. I did try and look up some background on them. It had them listed as like a sub-team, but it didn't say who for. I don't know if Sunsoft themselves had any development wings. I thought they were just a publisher, but it might be something worth looking a little deeper into. The game itself was released in November 1997. Well, November, December, depending where in the world you were. Again, it's a very early title. Well, I didn't even think about it like this, but yeah, our first 4 episodes in a row have all been games from the first sort of roughly the first year of launch.
Yeah.
I'd say so far this is the best that we've covered, but we'll get to that later. This isn't really behind the scenes, but it should be noted that the game has garnered a bit of a cult following online. I actually had a look earlier and I found like a Chameleon Twist fan group.
Really?
Yeah, there was only a few hundred members, but there's like some people who like say it's the most underrated platformer of the era, and in many ways it's better than the big ones. And I can't say I've subscribed to that thinking, but I don't know, they make some interesting arguments. They kind of say like, the mechanics were more original, and it's such a weird game that makes it more interesting. So obviously some people do like it. I mean, that's moving more into reception area. Behind the scenes, that's pretty much it. No one really knows anything about the development. Japan System Supply obviously went into administration in late 1999, and I tried looking up some of the developers. I couldn't find any other work that they'd done. So I think that's it for this week, mate.
So after this episode airs, are we gonna go share this episode with that small fan community of Chameleon Twist fans?
Oh yeah, big time.
I don't know how well it'll go over, but I think we should do it. Just throw the grenade in the room and run and just see what happens.
Well, you might love the game. Really, we'll see. We've still got a little while yet to go. Maybe I can talk.
Fair enough. I hope you do. So with that, we're going to go into our next segment, which is presentation. All right. So, as per usual, when we get into presentation, we kind of split it up, half visuals, half music. So we're going to jump right in with visuals. Kate, go ahead and take it away.
Right, okay. The models are nothing to write home about at all. They're very low poly, poorly detailed. To me, the texture work is just really ugly. I mean, if we're talking about the character models themselves, look at just the main character. He's just like a little blue blob. The only other character in the game who isn't an enemy, the white rabbit, ugly all around. The levels, they're bright, but they're ugly. There's very short render distance. They don't even try and mask it with like fog or camera angles or lighting. I mean, to be fair, a majority of the game takes place in like single room setups, but there are like 2 or 3 areas which are exterior, and the one that sticks out in the head is the Desert Palace stage. And at the start of the stage, it looks like you're just on a floating platform, but then as you move forward, suddenly like more of the level just pops up right in front of you. How did you find the frame rate?
So, at one part, I can't remember what level it is. One of the bad guys or whatever shoots fireballs at you, and you can obviously eat them up. But if you choose not to, you can just kind of dodge them and try to get away from them. And I noticed this was really the only part where I noticed a frame rate issue was that the more flames were on the screen, obviously it's really bogged down, and it just started really slowing down. And obviously at that point I realized, well, frick, I better eat some of these things because it's just going to keep slowing me down and all that stuff. So I noticed that was an issue. So I wanted to point that out. As far as like the low poly stuff, I totally agree with what you're saying. The character that you're playing as obviously has a design and has a face, and you just can't really tell, especially the further you get away from your character or the character gets from the camera or whatever. You just can't even tell where the front like where your face is. And so obviously when you're trying to line up these tongue shots, as I guess you call them, I couldn't even tell where I was pointing. Obviously you hit the R button, and you have a little guide there to show you where you're facing, but that was frustrating. The textures were not great at all. In fact, that was one of the first things I noticed. And even at times, like there'll be like a cut corner where you're up high and you're turning a corner, and I would cut it early because the textures just kind of run together. There was really no defined edge. And then the other part that I think is worth pointing out that was just dreadful, both in visual and like animation, would be the cutscenes. Be it the opening cutscene or the ending cutscene, which makes no sense, the cutscene itself in general, and we can talk about that in the next section. But I mean, oh man, it was so blocky, and you could see like gaps between the eyeball and the rest of the body, and you just got to see it, but it really is very poorly done, and just it was really rough to look at, and it was really slow and choppy the way it was animated. It was rough. So those were kind of the visual things I think that I noticed at first.
Right.
So
okay, yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. Like for the most part, the game runs at a consistent frame rate, but yeah, like you said, when too many, I mean, there were sprites. It should be worth noting those flames that were actually sprites. So I guess when there's too many sprites on screen, the game just can't handle it.
right.
A similar thing happens. There's a room later on one of the stages where there's like a whole bunch of like little chocolate pieces, and there's like these enemies jumping around, and if you time it so everything's in the middle of the room at the same time, it like the frame rate just dips dramatically.
Yeah.
The cutscenes weren't very good, were they, at all?
No. They felt very thrown together last minute kind of thing.
And I've seen like a few reviews of this game that forgive it and say, oh, it was 1997, people were still trying to figure out how to make these kind of games, and the technology was all new. Well, I'm sorry, but Nintendo did it 100 times better a year previous with Mario 64.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand. Like, Nintendo got it so right on the first try, and I'm not just bigging them up. I mean, it's not like that game's flawless, it's not, but to go from that to Chameleon Twist a year later, I mean, can you imagine if you got this as a Christmas present, like as your only new game?
Jeez. No, I can't imagine that. That would be awful.
Um,
in my opinion.
Yeah, so ugly, ugly game all around. The visuals just don't appeal to me. Like even like the concept art and the box art and stuff, just the aesthetic is just way off. And also, what I don't understand, you've got a game based on the like you playing as a chameleon, but in the opening cutscene you get turned into a humanoid, and you never use any of the chameleon. Like to me, the main trait of a chameleon is disguising itself.
Right.
Like, is it just me, or like, why did they even make? Was it just to give him a long tongue?
I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
why didn't they just call
And
it
they, like-
Lizard Man or something?
Yeah, you can't climb on anything. Can't like chameleons climb up things.
Yep.
Can't do that. Yeah, I agree. Another thing I wanted to add, pretty much every, I keep calling them bad guys. That's such a like juvenile term, but basically every enemy you come up against, I just thought they looked pretty bad too. I think they were 2-dimensional, weren't they? There wasn't really.
Some of them were, some of them weren't. I think most of them were. Like, for example, Antland, where there's a bunch of ants. They're all 2D sprites. They'll maybe have like 2 or 3 different angles, but yeah, they're
and I get why they do that. Obviously, you can't have 3D models for everything, and some of these things are smaller. But I don't know. It just looked real pixely and kind of crude. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. And even those
it doesn't mesh with the poly stuff. Like
right.
games like Mario and Banjo, the sprites mesh really well with the 3D models. This, it felt like 2 different art departments had just thrown their work together.
Right. Totally.
So, as for the music, I feel like I'm really repeating myself here, because this is kind of what I said last week with ISS 64, that it was like, generic, bouncy, fun soundtrack. But I suppose playing this game has made me appreciate ISS a little bit more, because
yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is real bottom of the barrel stuff. I'm sorry. Okay, a couple of the tunes, the best thing I could possibly say is they're catchy, but I think they're catchy because they loop every 2 minutes, and I died like loads of times in the stages, so I heard the songs repeatedly.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I think there was a couple that were decent. There was one, I think it was the final boss. The second form song was pretty good, and one of the earlier levels it was okay, but oh my gosh, there was one song in Kids Land. The Kids Land song was just the thing of nightmares, man. It just, and yeah, I kept dying a bunch there too, and so I did hear it over and over and over again, but it was a bit maddening. So I agree, bottom of the barrel, not very good. I know I've heard some people say they like the music in it, but I just, for the most part, I really wasn't into it. But I don't feel like it took me out of it. I mean, it kind of fit with what we were playing, what we were getting, but just overall, not a great package, if you ask me. And then another thing I noticed, I don't know if you noticed this, Kay, but some of the sound effects were really weird. The biggest one that came to my mind, the one that I took note of, is when your character gets hit or takes damage, it just does this like, and it sounds like a freaking cat, like meowing basically, and I was just like, okay, I get what you were going for, but it was really weird. Every time you get hit, and it's like,
yeah, a lot of the sound
the best
effects
you could do.
I can't even say they're stock, because they're not stock. They're just weird. Like,
yeah.
Like sometimes I know if you walk through a door and jump at the door frame as you go through, you bang your head, and like, it looks like it's plaster or wood, but it sounds like you're hitting like a metal tin. It's like a boop, and it's dude, lazy. And how annoying is the sound effect of like rolling your tongue out? It's like brrr, and if it can't find anything, it goes brr, 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 brr.
Yeah. Totally agree. That was actually pretty accurate.
Thank you.
I enjoyed that.
The ref says play on. Right, have you got any thoughts on the music? Or no, sorry, you've done the music, the sound effects, or were you pretty much done with that weird comment?
that was the big one that I didn't really care for. There was other ones that were a little weird, but that was pretty much it.
Okay. I gotta say the boss music is stuck in my head, unfortunately. But the opening bars, you know, that ba ba da ba ba ba. So
Yep.
I might.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I might just play that on repeat for this entire episode from now on. Maybe not.
I don't think we'll get any listeners.
I don't think
if
we're going to
we do
lose the
that.
subscribers we've got already.
Yeah, right. All right, and now for gameplay and mechanics, we are going to basically explain this game and how it works. So, Kay, if you want to go ahead and start us off, and whenever you start getting tired of talking, you can hand it over to me.
Yeah, okay. Well, as I sort of touched on earlier, I think the saving grace of this game, and the one reason I would suggest people check it out, is there are some very interesting ideas. And I suppose really they all revolve around the tongue, which is like the core mechanic of the game. It's not very graceful. I don't think it's very well implemented. I think the programming is shoddy, and I think the execution and the view given to the player makes it very awkward. But it's a good concept done wrong. So the tongue is essentially you can use it for offense, defense, and platforming. So you can use it to eat enemies, and if you tap it again, you can spit them back out. So it's kind of like there are shades of Yoshi there, definitely.
Yeah.
You can use it to latch onto posts, and then you can use it to do an interesting move called the post twirl, where I don't think that's the official name, that's what I call it, where you hit A and hold a direction, and then you spin around the post. And to be fair, that's probably the most ingenious thing about this game. Like, that's a really interesting platforming mechanic, which I've never seen being done before.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Go for it.
I agree. I think it's a cool mechanic. I think there's a lot to this. So, real quick, when I started playing this game, I did not do the tutorial part, which is separate from the single player, story mode or whatever. And so I jumped in and I assumed it was going to kind of show me what was going on, but it didn't. And it just, it just throws you right in, which for someone who's played the game before, it's probably better. But I was getting to parts and I was like, I have no idea how to get over there. And had no idea how to the button combination to do that move or whatever. And so I literally was messaging you like, how the heck do I do this? What am I missing? And you were like, oh mate, you got to go back and do the tutorial and stuff. And so I went back and learned that stuff. But that move in particular, the one you're talking about, I felt like it's cool, but I feel like it's kind of awkward to perform kind of the button combo that you have to do in order to get to work, and where you have to pick which way the stick you want to rotate. And so as I played through it, I felt like I got better at it, but at first I was really struggling with it. And so I don't know what your thoughts were, but I was just kind of frustrated. It wasn't even till the end that I felt like I was even slightly getting a good hold of it. But once again, I still thought it was a cool idea. But
no, dude, that's a fair point. I mean, it is awkward to pull off. I think, thinking about it, the biggest problem is that when you unfold your tongue, you latch onto a post, and then if you don't do anything within, I think, half a second, then instantly you start being pulled towards the post. I think when you latch onto a post, it should have been that you should release the B button to suck yourself in, or you could take your time to plan twisting around it. The problem is everything happens so fast, and don't forget this game is mainly marketed towards younger children. I think a little kid would have a real problem with this mechanic. I was okay when I was 11, I remember, but I mean by that time, I think if you're a decent gamer, that's not too bad of an age. But I think if I gave this to say for example my youngest son, who's 4 years old, the graphics and the style and the music would probably appeal to him, but if he was actually playing through it, I think he'd probably give up after the first level.
yeah,
So
no, I agree. Well, I can tell you, I couldn't even complete the They have specific rooms for the specific mechanics, the different moves.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even beat the one with the post twirl or whatever.
Really?
I got like halfway through and I was so frustrated with it. Yeah, it took me a while. I'm sure if I went back now, I could do it probably pretty easily. But at first, it was like, yeah, I was so frustrated. I tried it like 10, 15 times, and I was like, nope, I'm done with this. I need to move on. I'm wasting way too much time already.
Right.
Just trying to get this down. All right, so a couple of things. You've hit on some of the gameplay.
Can I just, before you move on, can I just say one more thing about the tongue? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the pole vault.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well,
No one cares.
Hey?
No one cares. No one cares about it, but let's hear about it.
It's a cool move. No, you presses the Z trigger, not the Z trigger, the Z trigger, and your tongue unfolds below you, so you sort of like do a handstand on your tongue, and then it sort of vaults you backwards, so you can. Well, no, you roll backwards so you can vault forward, and if you combine it with a jump at just the right time, then you get quite a bit of air, and you can use it to do longer jump. It's kind of this game's equivalent of, say, Mario 64's backflip, sort of, but less graceful.
Yeah, it's a little rough too, and like I said, I sucked at this part, this move at first, but toward the end, actually, I was doing pretty good with it. But I think it's way clunkier, and I don't think it gives you as much air or as you would think. But
it does, but you have to hit it at exactly the right time, and I can never get the timing down.
Yeah,
there was a part in Bombland where you have to like crack a couple of platforms to make them the right height, and then vault up them. And I must have lost about 20 times trying to do that.
Yeah.
So, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, it's cool. So basically the game starts out and it opens up in a jungle, and it reveals our character. Now, before this starts, actually, there is a character select where you get to choose from, I believe, 4 different characters.
Yeah.
There is Linda, Jack, Fred, and Davy.
Yeah.
Now, Kay, which person do you play with?
Well, Davy is the canonical main star of the game, so I just played as Davy.
Says who?
Says the
box
art and the
art?
manual and everything.
That doesn't mean it's canonical, though.
The manual says it's Davy's adventure and that he's brought his friends for the ride.
Well, you should have said that then. You said the box art, not the manual.
I think when you listen back, you'll hear that you talked over me when I said the manual, but that's fine, mate. Carry on.
Yeah, I'll make sure to do that. I played as Fred because his eyes were partially closed. I don't know what that insinuates, but it spoke to me, so I chose him. I'm assuming they all handle the same way, perform the same way.
No differences whatsoever, just different colour.
Okay, so back to our story here. We open in a jungle of some sort, and we see a chameleon, a real life, what we would think of looks like a chameleon to us. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we get our first Wizard of Oz reference. Not Wizard of Oz. Alice in Wonderland, excuse me. Reference of the game. And we see this rabbit hopping by late for some very important date with his watch, and I think he had glasses. I don't know. It's like, what is going on? And so all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to go jump in this portal. And our chameleon character decides, hey, I'm going to jump in this portal too. And in doing so, turns him into said humanoid figure, form, what have you. And so let me ask you, Kay, are we in Wonderland at this point? What is going on? Do you even know? Does it explain it maybe in the manual?
Nope. It's
okay.
Everything you see on screen.
Literally makes no sense.
Literally, there is no reason for what is happening, because it's not even like when you get there, you've got to like solve a crisis or set someone free. There is really no plot to this game. It's just you follow a rabbit through some worlds, and like when you first drop through the hole at the beginning of the game, you speak to the rabbit, and he says, "All right, mate, this is going to be a challenge for you." And you're just thinking, well, why? Like, why am I here? Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I would definitely say that was pretty poor planning on creating some kind of in-depth plot, or even to any degree. There's just, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any conflict, and you're just kind of out to do these things. So you get started, and one of the first things you realize is that you're collecting, correct me if I'm wrong, they're crowns, right?
Yep.
Do we know why we're collecting crowns?
Nope.
Beautiful.
No, there is no reason, and there is no secret end game where you become king or something. It is just, it's almost like a satire of collectathons in a way, in that it is just a useless trinket, completely useless.
Yeah.
So
completely.
And they never even explain to you, it's not like anything comes up and says, oh, hey, try and get these crowns. You just collect them, and then at the end it says how many you've got.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if perhaps in an earlier build of the game they were linked to the level unlock mechanic, and then when they marketed it more towards younger children, they dropped it and just kept them in as bonuses, maybe.
Well, are you talking about the fact that if you get all of them, you unlock a bonus level?
Well, no, because you don't need to get all of them for that. But what I'm saying is, I wonder, because they seem completely pointless aside from the bonuses, which we'll get to shortly.
Right.
I am wondering if, it might have been sort of more like Mario or Banjo, where, collect 15 crowns to access stage 2, collect 30 to, so on and so forth.
Right. Okay, would you be down to go ahead and talk about the levels?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, straight off from the bat, you've got Jungle Land, which is an amazing title. I'm sure you agree.
Yes, very original.
The Jungle Land is actually a flat grass texture against a mountain floating in the sky above what looks more like rainforest. And I'd say 60% of the level takes place inside a mine. So,
super jungle, man. Super jungly.
If it's a fun intro level, it's probably one of the better levels in the game because it's not quite as frustrating as some of the levels later on.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of kicked your ass at first because you didn't know all the moves, which the game doesn't tell you, and you would have no reason to think you'd have to go on a training mode buried in the options.
To be fair, I finished the level. I just there was a lot of crowns that I missed at certain points, and I kind of felt like I was missing something. So, but I'm glad you were there to kind of tell me, yeah, you need to go do that, because I don't know if I ever would have, and I totally would have got stuck later. So,
Okay.
But yeah, even if there was just something that popped up on screen to kind of give you a reminder of how to do something, like that really wouldn't be that hard to do, and I don't think it would be that annoying, but that's just me. So.
Actually, I do have to say, the rabbit at the start of Jungle Land says, remember, if you get stuck, you can visit the training room, but I just forgot that, actually.
See, when I saw that, I assumed that meant the training room was like in the level.
Right.
And so I was like getting started, and I was like, well, where's the training room? And I was like, oh, it's probably like as we go. I didn't realize he was mentioning it in the menu, because I did see it in the menu because I scrolled through the menu and looked in the options and all that. But when I saw him mention that, I assumed that he was meaning it was built into the the game. So that was why there was a little confusion there with me as well. So
yeah.
You want to talk about once you get done talking about the level, if you want to talk about the boss, because if there's not a lot to talk about with the level, you can just go to the boss.
Yeah, the jungle boss, I remember you had to knock him off a ledge. I can't even remember what it is now. What was it?
Dude, it was this ugly looking monkey thing with it was like Donkey Kong with Super Saiyan hair, and
That's it, yeah.
It was just really stupid. I was like, this is not cool.
Yeah, you just had
I
to...
even made it. Oh, and he had sunglasses on.
Right. Yeah, riveting. So should we just carry on? I've got nothing to say about that, man.
I mean, as an intro, and it's worth mentioning, basically, the whole level is built up with a bunch of different rooms, give or take. And so you enter a new room, and there's a puzzle that you have to do. So it's a platforming puzzle kind of thing. So sometimes the door is locked and you got to figure out what to do to open the door, or you just got to get to the other door. And along the way, there are, various things that you can collect. Real quick before we do move on to the next level, I do want to say that when you're collecting these crowns with collectathons and platforming games, usually they find creative ways to hide the collectibles and, satisfying ways that encourage exploring and puzzle solving. But I feel like with this one, yeah, sometimes you can just see a crown from afar and all right, there's going to be a little bit of a puzzle involved to try to get to it. But sometimes they would just hide crowns behind things that, because of the poor camera, which we can talk about a little bit later, we haven't brought that up really yet, you can't even see it, and then I'll like fall down into something, and then all of a sudden I'll find it on accident. And so I don't know, you could argue that encourages exploring, but I just feel like it's exploiting a terrible camera view.
Well, the problem with the camera is, they made it a semi-isometric camera to sort of simplify the experience and to like streamline it, which is commendable. But really, all it ends up doing is making the platform in itself like really impossible to judge. It becomes more trial and error than actual gamer skill.
Yep.
And I can't understand how some of those rooms got past quality assurance.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, man.
Yeah, and my biggest gripe with those was there's certain levels where it's big scale. There's a lot of, vertical space, and so the camera, they decided to be further back, and so as you move further away from the camera, it doesn't really follow you, and so the further you get away, it's like impossible to gauge any kind of depth or see where you're facing. It's frustrating. Those certain, like the one I sent you a picture of today where you're knocking down pillars with bombs.
Yeah.
It's just like the further you got away, and you couldn't even tell if, what you were standing on butted up against the wall or if there was a gap between the wall. And almost every time there's always a gap between the wall, which was kind of frustrating. But
yeah.
I don't know if you have anything else to add there, or we can move on to Antland after that.
Yeah, no, I just wonder, and this is the thought about the game overall, because it's such a short game, rather than put more effort into the actual development and intricacies of the game, do you think they made some of these rooms like extra difficult and tedious just to pad it out artificially?
Probably at the end. Some of the levels at the end.
So, but no, Jungle Land itself, to be fair, if you know the mechanics, the most part, it's okay. It doesn't really fall into that same trap. But then, the problems really begin in Antland. Now, I know, because at this point, we should tell the listeners, for stage 2 and 3, you only have to beat one of them, and for stage 4 and 5, you only have to beat one of them. So you only there's 6 stages, I'll tell you now, and you only have to beat 4 in total to beat the game. So did you beat Antland yourself?
I did not play the level through to completion.
Okay.
I played a little over half of it, and then I backed out of it. So not because it was hard, actually. It was quite easy, and there wasn't really a lot of platforming. It was mostly just fighting and stuff. But so I didn't have any issues with it. It didn't frustrate me. You just a little bored at that point. Yeah, and I knew I didn't have to beat it to move on, so I just kind of checked it out and played more than half of it probably, and then I backed out. So
okay, now there's a really clever mechanic in this stage, which is actually, I think, probably the best use of the tongue twister in the game, where there's these giant ants, and to defeat them, you have to latch onto the post and then twist around, trip them up. I thought that was really cool, and I thought, dude, if they had more stuff like that in the game and less stupid platforming, I think the game would be a better experience. Like, focus on what you do right. Don't try and do everything,
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was pretty cool too, and they brought it back a couple times throughout the level, and they were definitely, I think they realized it was something cool.
Well, the boss, and I know you didn't get this far, but the boss was pretty much a giant version of that idea. Okay. So that was quite a cool boss. It's actually one of the most difficult bosses. It was quite fiddly because you have to. There's like a giant ant and there's a post in the middle of the platform. You spin round, you knock it off its feet, but then you've got to, because there's a bunch of small ants around the field, you have to like quickly suck up a small ant and then hit him while he's down, and you have to do it about 6 times. So it's tough, very tough boss actually, but I did it. I think I died like 10 times on that one.
Okay.
He's harder than the last boss, put it that way.
Hey, I'm not judging you, man,
Okay.
because we're going to talk about Bombland in a second, so...
Okay, well, let's move on to Bombland.
Cool.
Go on. You tell me what you think, because I know this is one you did play through.
Yes. Off the top of my head, there wasn't really a whole lot that was standing out to me as far as, leading up to the boss, but there was I don't know. I'm trying to even remember anything that stood out to me. I just want to talk about the boss. Do you have any levels, any parts of the level that you want to hit on?
We sort of mentioned this earlier. The only part I really didn't like on this stage was the bit where you've got to pole vault up the like cracked bombable platforms, and if you make one screw up, then the only way to get another shot is to die, to reset the room and then try again.
Speaking of that, I was never a huge fan of that. That always kind of frustrated me. Sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not. But all right, so in Bombland, there's a level which I was just talking about a minute ago, where there's these pillars and there's little cubes that the pillars are made of, and you can blow them up to bring them lower so you can jump on them. And so you have to blow a bunch up by eating these bomb bad guys and move your way up the pillars.
Yep.
And so if you get all the way to the top and you spent 3 to 4 minutes getting it all set up, and then you screw up because of the terrible camera so far away and you fall down, you respawn, which is kind, but all of a sudden you have to do that whole thing completely over. And so I don't know. It's just, I guess it's not the most unfair game because there really aren't an amount of lives and all that, but I don't know. Just the fact that the room resets is annoying. Like, it's just as easy to walk out at the door where you respawn or whatever and then walk back in to have it reset. But I feel like when you die and you have to restart, that seems kind of counterintuitive if you ask me. But
yeah, no, fair enough. I can see your point. But aside from that, I think the level was reasonably inoffensive. So if we move on to boss, personally, I thought he was really simple.
What?
Like, I beat him in like 10 seconds.
No, dude. No, you didn't.
Dude, honestly, I'm guessing you didn't based on your reaction. What was it you didn't?
Dude.
Go on.
This was the first part of this game where I almost like rage quit and was just done. This boss, I don't know why, gave me, actually I kind of have an idea why, gave me so many issues. I didn't look at the end to see how many times I died when I beat it, but I bet you it's an embarrassing number. I don't know. I could start out fine, and you eat little bombs that he drops, and then you throw them at him, and it kind of takes out his little tail as he goes or whatever. Nothing revolutionary there. But as he gets shorter, he gets faster, he gets more aggressive, and I'm not going to blame me on this, obviously, because this isn't my fault. I'm a good gamer, in my opinion. I'm kind of joking, but I'm serious. I think it's the camera angles in this, because as you're running around, the camera keeps moving, and so, yeah, I'm running from the boss. I need to see him, but I also need to see where I'm going, and so the camera would keep moving around, and I couldn't really control. I'm fighting with it. And I'm running into lava, I'm running into bombs, and just getting destroyed.
Did you try changing the camera for the boss?
What do you mean changing the camera?
Well,
like with the C
if
buttons?
you tap down C, then you can pan it out and it doesn't switch around as much.
Yeah, I don't think I hit down C.
But that's what I'd suggest for the bosses. Yeah, maybe that's why me and you had such a different experience. Like, I pulled the camera out so far, so it almost looked like Link to the Past style, like it was almost overhead. So
right.
I just grabbed the bombs, ran round to the back, and just kept shooting them.
Gotcha. Yeah, dude, I died a lot, and then I think when I finally beat him, I had 1 heart left or whatever, and it was just kind of a fluke. Like, I was just spamming the button to, pick up a bomb and throw it at him before I died, kind of thing. And I don't know, man. I struggled with that one. I was pretty frustrated. So
But it's cool though that actually brings me to a point I was going to make. It is cool how you've pretty much got unlimited lives and continues,
yes,
and you always start in the room where you died. So it's fair in that way.
yeah. No, I appreciate that because it would be a much more difficult game if that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Should we run on to Desert Land?
Yep.
Okay. I know you very briefly touched this, but you don't really have much. You didn't get far in it, did you?
I got about halfway through the Desert Castle. I mean, the main thing is that. Well, actually, I got less far in this one. Let me say that. Antland, I got much further.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to the part where you first were kind of use your tongue to scare the spikes away or whatever, and then you could jump through. I was kind of getting stuck there, and I was running out of time to play it, and so I just kind of quit at that point.
That's fine, dude. I just wanted to say this is possibly my favourite level, I think, out of all
Really?
of them. Yeah. It was the right balance of fun challenge against, fun challenge instead of annoying challenge. And I think maybe it was helped that this was the only level in the game which is entirely exterior. The jungle stage, you start in the exterior and then you go into the rooms like a third of the way through. But aside from that, every other stage it's always room to room, whereas this, it's like one big expansive. So because the camera's got more room to breathe, you don't feel as claustrophobic and as sort of, I don't know, I just found it more fun. I think the puzzles all worked really well, and I can't really pick any major faults of this one. I know you said you were having a little trouble with it, but I liked the tongue spike mechanic. The boss, I can't remember now. What was the boss? You wouldn't know.
I don't know. Nope.
Well, screw the boss. The level was good, so yeah. I don't know.
Clearly, it wasn't memorable. So.
Yeah, the boss couldn't have been memorable, but yeah, the level itself was fun. So yeah, I do remember now. Yeah, it's the thing that like jumps up and down, and when he lands, he like makes vibrations, and you have to swallow the vibrations because they become little creatures, and then shoot them back at him. Yeah, just generic boss, really.
Yeah. Okay.
There's also a part of this stage where it's like a sand slide, and you'd think it would be like Mario style, the really cool slides in the Mario 64 game.
Yeah.
But it's just not, because you can't move once you're on the slide. You're stuck in your position. The only way you can move is there are posts all the way down, and you have to quickly latch your tongue onto the post and turn using the tongue twist to change your position on the slide. So it's really weird.
Huh.
So
yeah, that is weird.
Anyway, I know you're dying to get onto Kids Land, so
yes, the bane of my existence. This was the second part where I wanted to rage quit, and I got really frustrated and pushed to my edge. But you could argue, I guess, that it made for an rewarding feeling, I guess, when I beat it. But I would even maybe disagree with that. So basically this one is kids land themed or whatever, so that pretty much everything is like candy or cakes or ice creams, and as I mentioned earlier, the music is a bit monotonous and makes you want to pull your hair out. But there was a couple different things. There were some platforms that when you jumped on them, they kind of had a predetermined track that they would follow, which kind of reminded me of Super Mario 64, but it wasn't really until the last room that I was really pushed to my limit. So before I jump into that, was there any other parts of the level that you wanted to hit on?
Nah. I mean, it's just.
I mean, we could sit here and explain things, each room to people, but if you haven't played it, you're sitting here listening to us talk about it. It's not really gonna.
Yeah.
Mean anything, so
yeah, it's just a candy themed stage, and I really enjoyed it. So you didn't. So why don't you tell us about what you didn't like?
So the final room before you hit the boss of Kids Land,
the best room in the game, by the way.
No, by far the worst and the stupidest. That's not even a word, but So basically, you enter the room, and immediately the camera angle that it gives you is completely wrong and opposite of where you need to be looking. And so you have to make this. You have to latch your tongue onto a post that is also right in front of a moving platform. Otherwise, you fall into a pit. And so then immediately, I have to start mashing on the C left to move the camera, and I have to fight it for like 10 hits of the C button before it finally will give me what I'm looking for. And so you work your way through the room. The moving platforms, you have to latch on. You have to use the post twirl to get to other posts. And so, oh my gosh, I probably died dozens and dozens of times. And every time you fall through, you start at the very beginning of the room. Excuse me. And so, yeah, it was awful. And I finally got through it. And then as soon as I got through it, I realized I was on the boss, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That was probably the hardest part or whatever. And so, yeah, I struggled with it, and it might have, part of it to do with the post twirls, and maybe I'm not as good at them. But
it's a combination of the post twirl and the bad camera, like, let's be honest.
Yeah, and the camera, it was rough. And like halfway through the room, it gets really bad again. And there's even one part where you just have to jump off a piece of ground onto a moving platform, and mid jump the camera starts moving, and it's so frustrating. And there were a couple times where I would just miss my jump because the camera was moving while I'm making my jump, which I right after I just lined up the camera how I wanted it'll move while I'm making my jump. I don't know, it was frustrating. So then we moved on to the boss, which is a giant cake being controlled by little pieces of chocolate. And I didn't have any issues with this one. I think I beat it. I think I died twice, and one of them was just figuring out what was going on, and the second one was just stupid mistakes. But I don't know about you. I didn't really have any issues with the cake. So
yeah, no, it was an easy boss. You only have to hit it 4 times, don't you? Because it opens up and you swallow the chocolate from the middle, and there's only 4 pieces.
Yeah, 4 times. Yeah, that's pretty quick.
So interesting concept, to be fair. Like, it's a cool little boss. It's quick and easy. So
yeah, I agree.
Well, I guess you didn't mind it being a bit easier after the bomb boss.
I welcomed it. I was ready to move on. So yeah.
So then the final stage, Spooky Castle. Again, like you said, there's no point giving a room for room description because people who haven't played it just not going to get it. It's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit. I saw a review mention this, and I thought the same while playing it. The spooky level off Mario Land 2.
Oh yeah. Oh, Land?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just, I don't know, something about the atmosphere. It's basically like, it's called Spooky Castle. To me, it feels more like a haunted house.
Yeah, it wasn't very scary. I think the mansion level in Super Mario 64 was spookier, scarier than this was.
That one, yeah.
But it reminded me of that level, like the way that the light is kind of shining through the window and stuff. I don't know, it just kind of made me think of that level a little bit more.
Yeah.
I didn't really have any issues with this one, except for the last room of the whole place before you hit the final boss. Of course, they just, and it's one of those levels where you have to kind of inch across on these boards that are, just wide enough for you to walk on. And I have a pretty good joystick on my controller, so I shouldn't really have any issues. But you got to go all the way up, and then once you get to the top, there's flames, and it was frustrating. It wasn't as frustrating as the final room of the Kids Land, but I did struggle with it for a little bit and died more times than I would really honestly have cared to. But after that, it wasn't too bad. Got through that. And so after that, you get to the final boss, which is a ghost that basically takes the form of a bunch of different things, and it has these weird arms. You beat the arms, and then it goes into its final form, which is more of a tank sort of thing. And I actually thought this part was pretty fun. It shoots multiple of these like white balls that kind of look like ping pong balls, and you basically have to catch every one of these multiple shots, and then you have to throw them back at him. and every time you hit him, he gets a little bit smaller. But if you don't hit him enough times, then he gets big again, and then he moves around, and you got to start all over. So it did take me a little while to finally get it to where he would stop moving, and I was able to hit him enough times.
Yeah.
Did you have any issues with him?
No, it's the same here. It took me a couple of tries because I had to like figure out the best way to get the shot on him. Because you essentially have to suck like as many balls as you can from one shot, and then wait for him to get in position, and then kind of jump and shoot at the same time, just so he can't.
Right.
Because if he hits you while you're unloading, then it won't really hit him properly. So, but he's actually, as soon as you know how to do it, you can do it in like 20 seconds probably.
Yeah, you could do it real quick. So that's pretty much the end of the game. And so Kay, with all this adventure we've gone through, what are we left at the end? What do we get for all of our troubles as far as, cutscenes at the end? How does things end for our adventurer?
He goes to a platform in the middle of mist, which comes out of nowhere, and the rabbit's like, "Yeah, man, you can go home now."
And then what happens?
And then the credits roll.
No, he pops out of the portal and he's back to his normal form.
Oh yeah.
And he has a backpack on for some reason. Yeah. He jumps up a couple times, he hops up in the air, and then he walks away, and that's it.
Yep. And that's it.
That's it.
It was all worth it.
No.
Did you play either of the unlockable stages?
I did not. I wasn't aware of them until I was doing some research later, and never did go back and check them out.
Okay, so I'll just quickly... If you get 50 crowns, then go back to Spooky Castle, and in the opening foyer, there's a door, and if you click on it, then you get a giant 3D billiards table, and you can play billiards by hitting the cue ball with your tongue, which is cool.
Is it cool?
The camera angle's crap, and if you walk into the balls by accident, you lose health.
Wow.
So it's weird. I guess if you can't afford Virtual Pool 64, then it's a good substitute.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that game. We might have to check that out sometime.
Definitely. And then the other unlockable stage, I think it's if you get 120 crowns. I know you don't need every single one because there's about 135 altogether, but it's around about 90% of the crowns you need to get. Then you unlock the boss rush stage, which is just a boss rush, and that's it.
Yep. All right, man. Let's just go ahead and I think we can really quickly just wrap up with our final thoughts and get out of here. All right, so really quickly, in as little words as possible, Kay, what are your final thoughts on this game?
I think I'm coming out of this the exact same way I came in. I think there's some very, very interesting concepts here, and below all the mess, there is a good idea. But the execution, production, and artistry behind the title fell so short of what I would deem as acceptable for marketplace that I think this is one that I don't really mind that it's not popular, and I don't think it deserved to be popular. So I can't see myself ever touching it again. Yep. However, I would consider the sequel, because I think they could have possibly learnt some lessons from the mistakes they made this time. So I will probably pick up the sequel at some point.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd be interested to see if they learn their lesson with anything. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a cool concept. I think there are some things that they've done that's been done, and there were some things they did that hadn't been done. I think with a better studio, this could have been a really great game. And it's unfortunate it didn't work out that way, but it is what it is. I would not suggest this game to people unless they're really just looking for games that are, of this style and they haven't played it. Otherwise, I would just say steer clear of it unless you can find it for like $1. I don't really think it's worth it personally, but there are people who love it, and I apologize for my thoughts. But other than that, yeah, I didn't much enjoy it. But hey, that's the point of the show, is to do the good and the bad. Surprisingly, IGN gave it a 6.5 out of 10. That seems a bit high. I don't know if I would have even gone over a 5. It probably would have been somewhere down in there.
Well, the reviewer signed off on his review saying he didn't enjoy it and couldn't recommend it, and then gave it 6.5. I think this was back in the era where 6.5 then was the equivalent of like 3 now.
Okay, that would make more sense.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts? Anything else before I wrap her up?
Dude, I'm done. I'm ready to go get my backpack and just head off into the forest, I think.
Yeah, and do a couple hops.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, that is it for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I don't know if it's more enjoyable to hear us rip a game apart than it is to praise one, but we'll figure it out eventually. But anyways, join us next week. Next week we are going to be joined by our first and a very special guest. We'll have guest hosts on here from time to time, and so next week will be our first one. So it won't just be Clay and Kay. You won't just be hearing our voices. There'll be another person giving their opinions. And so next week we will be looking at Pokemon Puzzle League, celebrating the month of Pokemon month, as some people celebrate it. So look forward to that. I've never played it, so I'm looking forward to picking it up. Kay, have you played Pokemon Puzzle League before?
Yeah, dude, it's a good one.
Okay, cool. So make sure to check us out on kayandclay.com. We do have a website. Kay did a lot of work on it, and it looks awesome. I know nowadays not as many people go to specific websites outside of social media, but make sure to check it out. We're going to be adding more shows, more podcasts, more videos, all kinds of content over the next couple months, so check that out. We also have links to our iTunes feed and our YouTube channel. If you are subscribed to us on iTunes and you would be willing to give us a review, even if it's just 3 or 4 words, we would so appreciate it. If you could like our video, if you're listening to this on there, give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed to us, please do so. We would greatly appreciate it. If you guys have any thoughts or questions, you think we're idiots for hating this game, or would like to request a game that we should be doing, obviously that we have so much more to come, but if there's something you can't wait to hear about, please give us an email at strictly64@gmail.com. That's the number 64. So strictly64@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.